ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिन्निति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधरा श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंदा। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। मूकं करोति वाचालं पंगुं लंघयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे श्रीगुरुं दीनतारणम्। Today we will look at the history in ISKCON of how initiations have been conducted from the time of Srila Prabhupada's disappearance in 1977. Before Srila Prabhupada left this planet and wound up his manifest Leelas, on July 9th, 1977, Srila Prabhupada issued a directive to the whole institution how initiations have to be conducted in the organization of ISKCON. I'll read a few portions of the directive of July 9th, 1977. Recently, when all of the GBC members were with His Divine Grace in Vrindavan, Srila Prabhupada indicated that soon he would appoint some of his senior disciples to act as Ritvik, a representative of the Acharya, for the purpose of performing initiations, both first initiation and second initiation. His Divine Grace has so far given a list of 11 disciples who will act in that capacity, and the list of 11 names are given. In the past, temple presidents have written to Srila Prabhupada recommending a particular devotee's initiation. Now that Srila Prabhupada has named these representatives, temple presidents may henceforward send recommendation for first and second initiation to whichever of these 11 representatives are nearest their temple. After considering the recommendation, these representatives may accept the devotee as an initiated disciple of Srila Prabhupada by giving a spiritual name, or in the case of second initiation, by chanting the Gayatri thread, just as Srila Prabhupada has done. The newly initiated devotees are disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the above 11 senior devotees acting as his representative. So, it is clear from this that what order Prabhupada gave for how initiations will be conducted in ISKCON after his manifest Leela was through the form of representatives of Srila Prabhupada called as Ritvik. This letter originated out of a conversation on May 28th between a group of GBC members selected as a committee to ask certain specific questions to Srila Prabhupada during his last days. So on May 28, 1977, this delegation met Srila Prabhupada and asked him the question, we want to know how initiations will be conducted in ISKCON, particularly at the time when you no longer are with us. And Prabhupada had said, soon I will appoint some of you as officiating Acharya. And that conversation led to the action of this directive coming out. Ultimately, this is the only document which is available which speaks of how initiations will be conducted after Prabhupada's time. Now, after Prabhupada left this planet in 1977, what happened in ISKCON over a period of time, we will see. In 1978, immediately after Prabhupada's departure from this world, the 11 people who are appointed as Ritvik, representatives of Srila Prabhupada, they assumed the position of initiating spiritual masters. They assumed the position of regular initiating spiritual masters instead of continuing to act as representatives of Srila Prabhupada. They divided the whole world into 11 zones, and they nominated one person for each zone and said, for this zone, you are the Acharya. And each of them was given a name. Just like His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada was called Srila Prabhupada by his disciples. Similarly, each of them got a name. Somebody was called Gurupad, somebody was called Bhaktipad, somebody was called Acharyapad, etc., etc. And letterheads of ISKCON for a particular zone would carry International Society for Krishna Consciousness. That's the top of the letterhead. And below that, founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And below that, current Acharya, so-and-so person. This is how this system was instituted in ISKCON, that these 11 people are the next people in the Guru Shishya Sampradaya. They are the next Acharyas. In every temple, Vyasasans were created, where for these initiating gurus, these zonal acharyas, whenever they would visit the temple, they would be given an opulent Vyasasan to sit on, right next to Srila Prabhupada, of the same size and same grandeur as what was offered to Srila Prabhupada. And they would be offered Guru Puja, and they would give class from there. There would be Pada Puja for them. Exactly the way how Prabhupada would be treated whenever Prabhupada would come to a temple, in the same way these people were also treated. Now, this happened in 1978. But with time, this system that was instituted changed. We look at a few resolutions that have been passed in ISKCON by the GBC over a period of time. These resolutions are available on the official GBC website. Any of you can visit the website and read these resolutions for yourself. I am presenting today only a few excerpts of some resolutions of the GBC which are related to the Guru matter. This is a resolution from 1983, March 18, 1983, because the GBC meeting gets conducted over a period of a few days. Even the dates are also mentioned. In the 1983 GBC meeting on March 18th, the resolution number 3 states that at every ISKCON temple, there must be a Vyasasana for the temple's initiating Guru, and their pictures must be displayed on Vyasasan and altar and regularly offered Guru Puja. This was the understanding. This was the system which was prevalent even in 1983. A little bit of background to understand this will be helpful. When Prabhupada was personally present and his manifest leelas were going on until 1977 November 14th, every devotee in ISKCON, whether it was a bhakta or it was a most senior devotee, all of them had a common understanding about the position of Guru. Diksha Guru was Srila Prabhupada, and all of them understood that Diksha Guru means he has to be a Paramahamsa, Uttamadikari, Mahabhagavata. So only such a person, exalted person, who is eligible to sit on the Guru Shishya Parampara, to sit in that chain of Guru Shishya Parampara, of the caliber of Narada Muni, Vyasadeva, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, only the 6 Goswamis, only such personalities can play the role of initiating Guru. Because it was very clear to everyone at that point of time, as I said, right from the Bhakta till the topmost, senior-most devotees, they all understood that initiating Guru means he's taking the responsibility of taking us back to Godhead. And nobody less than an Uttamadikari like Srila Prabhupada could play that role. So it was very clear in their minds. Naturally, after Srila Prabhupada's time, when these 11 people announced that they themselves are the next Acharyas, they got elevated to the same position. When the people heard wrongly or otherwise, when the people heard that Srila Prabhupada has appointed these 11 people as the next Acharya, naturally they accorded them that kind of status. And so therefore, these kind of resolutions were in keeping with the normal understanding of the devotee community. So therefore, because these people had declared themselves as the current Acharya and they had declared themselves as initiating spiritual masters, so therefore, it was necessary that every temple should have a Vyasasana for the initiating Guru, and their pictures had to be displayed on the Vyasasan, just like Prabhupada's Murti used to be kept in the temple hall and even inside the altar. So, the Aratis used to happen through the initiating spiritual master for that zone. All Bhoga offering used to happen through that initiating spiritual master, the current Acharya of that zone. Exactly whatever used to be performed for Prabhupada, the same used to happen for these initiating spiritual masters who had self-authorized themselves to that position. Now, what had happened is, these resolutions that we are seeing are related to 1983. In fact, as early as 1981 itself, that is barely 3 years from 1978, when all these 11 personalities had declared themselves to be the next Acharya, problems had started surfacing. 1981 itself, Hamsaduta Maharaj had started deviating. And it came to light that Hamsaduta Maharaj was accumulating hordes of weapons and he was not listening to the GBC. So already some sort of dissonance has started appearing in the movement. Now, interestingly, by 1983, March 19th, another resolution happens, which is indicative of the kind of deviation which has started taking root. This is related to Kirtanananda Maharaj. The first resolution of March 19th, 1983 goes like this: that ISKCON is appreciative of the wonderful contribution of His Divine Grace. Please note, His Divine Grace, Kirtanananda Swami Bhaktipad. Please note, Bhaktipad, a new Vrindavan have made to the Krishna consciousness movement by constructing the Prabhupada Palace. The GBC was heard a personal request by Srila Bhaktipad to allow the present system of dressing Srila Prabhupada in the palace to continue. Although the system does not necessarily represent the consensus opinion of the body, out of respect to Srila Bhaktipad, it has been decided to not change it. Resolution number 2. This form of worship cannot be performed anywhere else in ISKCON. So what was this special form of worship which was being offered to Prabhupada by Bhaktipad? Please take a look at this image of Srila Prabhupada, how Prabhupada was being dressed in New Vrindavan during the time of, quote unquote, His Divine Grace, Kirtanananda Swami, quote unquote, Bhaktipad. So, the GBC at that point saw that something was not okay with this. But because of the preeminent position given to Kirtanananda Swami, they all went along with him. But actually, this was the tip of the iceberg. Further, as time would reveal, Kirtanananda Swami fell from grace. He was indicted in a murder case. He was involved in the murder of another devotee. And he was also found engaging in homosexual activity with small children. He turned out to be a pedophile. These are very unfortunate things, but this is reality. This is what has happened in ISKCON. The way Prabhupada was being dressed itself was an indication. The GBC, instead of taking a strong stand and chastising him and bringing him to line, decided to go along with him and gave him a free rope. The very fact that the resolution says this form of worship cannot be performed anywhere else in ISKCON makes it clear that it is not our standard that Srila Prabhupada has established. Anyway, that is a different matter. Now, I draw you again to another resolution in 1984, a resolution which was appointing the executive committee. You can look at, there is a list of names which is mentioned here, and you can see a few of them, they have before their names the title His Divine Grace. You can understand from this that even up to 1984, that is 6 years from 1978, it was common to call these people His Divine Grace. Although we all know the title His Divine Grace is used only for the most exalted Uttamadhikari personalities. like Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, His Divine Grace Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj, etc. It cannot be used for ordinary personalities who are prone to fall down. But this practice had come into vogue. So we can see until 1984, it used to be a common system to address the 11 people as His Divine Grace, to give them honorific titles of Vishnupad, Gurupad, Bhaktipad, etc. And to have big Vyasasans in the temple hall on the same level as Srila Prabhupada and of the same grandeur, and to have their photographs on the altar, to have their names on the letterheads as current Acharya. These were all the common practices that were prevalent. Now we go to resolution in 1985 on February 28. Resolution number 1 states, worship of an Acharya outside of his Prabhudatta Desha is not obligatory beyond ordinary etiquette accorded any sannyasi or senior Vaishnava. What had happened when a Acharya for a particular zone, a zonal Acharya goes to his zone, he is used to receiving the kind of welcome that Prabhupada used to receive. He was given a Vyasasan, Guru Puja was done for him, etc. And all the people in the temple of his zone would all be his disciples. And this zone, which they had divided amongst themselves, they gave a fancy name, Prabhudatta Desha. Actually, Prabhupada did not give them any Desha, but they assumed the different zones and they called it Prabhudatta Desha. Now, when one zonal Acharya of a particular zone would go to some other zone, there the disciples don't belong to him. It is somebody, they are disciples of some other zonal Acharya. So when he goes there, what is the kind of receiving that should be accorded to him? There used to be some confusion. Some temples, we can understand by this, some temples might have had some objection. Some other zonal Acharya is coming, why should we offer Guru Puja to him? Our Guru is somebody else. We should offer Guru Puja to him. And so, this resolution was passed that if the zonal Acharya of one zone goes to some other zone, then he can be treated like any other normal sannyasi. No need to offer him Guru Puja and the kind of worship that you would offer to your own Guru. Fair enough. Now, you look at this March 1st, 1985, resolution number 6. All disciples must offer Guru Puja daily to their spiritual master. So, it was very clear, daily Guru Puja, exactly like how we offer Guru Puja to Srila Prabhupada, daily Guru Puja was also instituted for the zonal Acharya. This was the practice even in 1985. Then, on March 1, 1985, there is this interesting resolution number 19. Until the philosophy paper on the position of a spiritual master is produced, the 1978 GBC resolution on pranam mantras be suspended. This is another thing that had happened in 1978 when all these 11 people assumed the zonal Acharya position. They not only assumed the title of His Divine Grace, they not only assumed titles of Vishnupad, Bhaktipad, Gurupad, etc. They also took on individual pranam mantras, Nama Om Vishnupadaya, etc., 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 name of that spiritual master. Just like we have a pranam mantra for our beloved spiritual master Srila Prabhupada, we have a pranam mantra for Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, we have a pranam mantra for Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, etc. So now they are the next Acharyas. They are the current Acharyas. So all of them had individual pranam mantras also. But by 1985, they realized something is not okay with this. So they suspended the pranam mantras and said, let us first have a philosophy paper on the position of spiritual master. So now we can see the seeds of confusion starting to come about. On March 2nd, 1985, resolution number 5, all Acharyas, please note, quote unquote, all Acharyas, all these people are being referred to as Acharyas. All Acharyas Acharya with a capital A. All Acharyas should personally make it clear to their disciples that he is not offended if his god brothers do not chant his pranam mantras in Kirtan and do not attend his Guru Puja. What was happening in ISKCON temples? These 11 people, when Prabhupada left this planet, Prabhupada did not leave behind ISKCON with only these 11 people. There were thousands of other disciples whom Srila Prabhupada had. So these zonal acharyas, when they started taking Guru Puja worship and all these kind of things, and they had their own disciples, the disciples of the zonal acharya, they would be offering Guru Puja, and they would see the temple president and other people who are god brothers of this zonal acharya. They don't offer Guru Puja. They are not offering pranam mantra to him. When they do premadhvani for their zonal acharya, then these people are not offering their respects. So they got offended. Now that could be one of the reasons why they said, let us suspend the pranam mantras for now, and made it clear to the disciples that if the god brothers don't offer them similar kind of respect, and Guru Puja and pranam mantra and all those things, it's not an offense. They were forced to issue this clarification. So, first of all, the fact is that they themselves were not sure about what they were doing. Otherwise, why are they saying, let us wait for the philosophy paper on the position of a spiritual master to be produced? So, that means the decision of having 11 acharyas, zonal acharyas, giving them titles of His Divine Grace, giving them Vishnupad, Bhaktipad, Gurupad and all those kind of things, instituting daily Guru Puja for them, having pranam mantras for them, all these things actually were not based on the philosophy of Srila Prabhupada. This is like a reverse engineering. They instituted a system. Now they are saying, let us write a philosophy, do some research and write a philosophy paper on gurus to validate whatever we have done. Anyway, now 1987, we move to 1987, resolution number 38. That the GBC recommend that Srila Prabhupada be glorified in Kirtan only by the words Jai Prabhupada and not Jai Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada or Jai Gurudev, law of ISKCON. Look at how they are limiting Prabhupada's glories. Prabhupada is the real Jagat Guru. Prabhupada himself said, there are so many people who call themselves Jagat Guru, but they don't even have one disciple outside of India. And Prabhupada is having so many disciples outside India, all over the world. He is the real Jagat Guru. And the GBC is passing a resolution, we should not glorify Srila Prabhupada by singing Jai Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada. Nor can we call him Gurudev. Resolution number 55, 1987. The confusion is getting deeper. That there should be no personal seat for gurus in the temple room other than Prabhupada's Vyasasana. So we saw in the 1985, pranam mantras were thrown out of the window. Now 1987, Vyasasanas have gone out of the window. One asana shall be present in the temple room for use as an asana for giving Srimad Bhagavatam class. Grand disciple of Srila Prabhupada can sit on the floor if they consider that it is improper to sit on the same asana used by their Diksha Guru. So this is a diminished Vyasasana called a Srimad Bhagavatam asana, on which only the zonal Acharya Guru can sit and his disciples cannot occupy this asana. Please remember this because it's important. As the confusion grows, we will see how this also transforms. Next, 1987. So, 1984, the pranam mantras were thrown out of the window. 1987, the Vyasasanas were dumped. One more resolution, resolution number 56, that the only Guru Puja inside the temple room will be for Srila Prabhupada. 57, resolution number 57, that the disciples of present gurus may worship their guru outside the temple room. So, now pranam mantras were dumped, Vyasasanas were dumped, Guru Puja got slightly shifted out. Instead of being thrown out of the window, you shifted into the next door, next room. Then, resolution number 58. that the disciple can keep the picture of his guru on the altar while offering aratik. The picture must be substantially smaller than those of the disciplic succession or be placed on a lower level. After the aratik, the picture should be taken away. So, the Vyasasan gone, Pranamantra gone, Guru Puja shifted outside the door, picture on the altar made temporary residence. Only during the Aarti it can be kept. After the Aarti it is to be removed. And size has to be smaller. If the picture of the spiritual master is in the altar, size doesn't matter. Anyway, that's a different point. So what they are trying to achieve by making the picture smaller is not clear. Fact is, picture is still there during the Aratik. Resolution number 60. That all honorific titles should not be used in the public forum, but can be used in communications between disciples and disciples to their Guru. Any titles like His Divine Grace should be treated as above. So, they moved the picture from the altar. They moved the Guru Puja from the temple hall to outside the temple hall. And now they restricted the use of Vishnupad, Bhaktipad, Gurupad, etc. and also His Divine Grace. That these can be used only in private, not in public. Actually, if we look at the philosophy-wise, all these actually they show a lot of contradiction to Prabhupada's teachings. If we look at Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, text number 15. Yat pada samshrayaha suta munaiha prashavayanaha sadhya punantyupasprushtaha swardhunyaponu sevaya. Translation by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. O Suta, those great sages who have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord can at once sanctify those who come in touch with them, whereas the waters of the Ganges can sanctify only after prolonged use. In the purport, Prabhupada mentions, pure devotees of the Lord are more powerful than the waters of the sacred river Ganges. One can derive spiritual benefit out of prolonged use of the Ganges waters, but one can be sanctified at once by the mercy of a pure devotee of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that any person, regardless of birth as Shudra, woman or merchant, can take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord and by so doing can return to Godhead. To take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord means to take shelter of the pure devotees. The pure devotees whose only business is serving are honored by names Prabhupada and Vishnupada, which indicate such devotees to be representative of the lotus feet of the Lord. I repeat, the pure devotees whose only business is serving are honored by the names Prabhupada and Vishnupada, which indicate such devotees to be representative of the lotus feet of the Lord. Anyone, therefore, who takes shelter of the lotus feet of a pure devotee by accepting the pure devotee as his spiritual master can be at once purified. Such devotees of the Lord are honored equally with the Lord because they are engaged in the most confidential service of the Lord, for they deliver out of the material world the fallen souls whom the Lord wants to return home back to Godhead. Such pure devotees are better known as wise lords according to revealed scriptures. The sincere disciple of the pure devotee considers the spiritual master equal to the Lord, but always considers himself to be a humble servant of the Lord. This is the pure devotional path. When we give somebody the honorific title of Vishnupad or Prabhupada or Bhaktipad or Gurupad, what does it mean? It means they are representatives of the lotus feet of the Lord, that they have the power of the Supreme Lord to take back the conditioned souls to the spiritual world. And it is the duty of the disciples of such personalities to honor them on the same level as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So there is no question of small photograph, worship only during Artik, do Guru Puja outside the temple hall, use the honorific title Vishnupad, Bhaktipad, etc. only in private. Don't use His Divine Grace in public. Prabhupada never gave any such instructions for himself. Prabhupada said everywhere, even on the books, Prabhupada's honorific titles are printed. Why? Because Prabhupada is authorized to use those titles. Whereas when we are not authorized, then we have to come up with all such excuses and adjustments. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita also, Madhya Leela, 10th chapter, 23rd verse purport, Prabhupada says, Lord Vishnu is the eternal Lord of everyone, and the representative of Lord Vishnu is the Lord's confidential servant. Such a person acts as the spiritual master for neophyte Vaishnavas. Therefore, the spiritual master is as respectable as Sri Krishna Chaitanya or Lord Vishnu himself. For this reason, the spiritual master is addressed as Om Vishnupad or Prabhupada. The Acharya, the spiritual master, is generally respected by others as Sripada, and the initiated Vaishnavas are addressed as Prabhu. So, this is very clear. Whom do we refer to as Prabhupada or Vishnupad or Bhaktipad or Gurupad? They are confidential servants of Krishna. They act on behalf of the Supreme Lord. They are representatives of the lotus feet of the Lord. They have the capability and the power to liberate the conditioned souls and take them back to Godhead. Only such personalities can be designated with these kind of titles. Anyway, but still they are continuing with the wrong practice. Resolution number 61 of the same year, which is 1987. So 1987, they are actually cutting down many of the things, because by now they have started realizing that many things are not okay. And 1987 is also the year when Ravindra Swarup Prabhu and others had created an uprising. So that was another reason why so many changes were brought about all of a sudden. Resolution number 61, that no one should declare himself or allow himself to be declared an Acharya or present Acharya for a geographical area or for ISKCON. There should not be any official use of the word Acharya. Now, Acharya word also dumped. Until then, the letterheads were boldly declaring, Founder Acharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, current Acharya so and so. Now, the GBC is saying, no, we should not use the word Acharya. Resolution number 62, that Vyasa Puja for present Guru should be observed only on one day a year, coinciding with the birthday of the Guru. And this celebration can be held in the temple room. So they said Vyasa Puja can be held in the temple room. Resolution number 63, that in the temple room, Kirtan, only the name of Prabhupada and his predecessors can be chanted. The words ISKCON Guru Vrinda Ki Jai is to be used in the Prema Vani prayers in place of the existing prayers. That means before 87 it was a practice, just like we sing Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. So if somebody is Bhaktipad, then Jai Bhaktipad also used to be sung. Now they said no, only Prabhupada can be glorified in the temple hall. Resolution number 64, that a new devotee who follows the 4 regulative principles and chants 16 rounds for the first 6 months, this is interesting, should chant Prabhupada's Pranam Mantra and worship him as founder Acharya of ISKCON and his Shiksha Guru. During the second 6-month period, the disciple may choose his future Diksha Guru and chant his Pranam Mantra. After a period of at least 1 year, the devotees may become eligible to be initiated. So, Pranam Mantra still continues to be there. A new devotee, when he has just joined ISKCON, he is supposed to chant only Prabhupada's Pranam Mantra, because everybody joins ISKCON. Why? By reading Srila Prabhupada's books. So when a person joins ISKCON, he knows only Prabhupada. Now they are saying, for 6 months let him be there, because he knows only Prabhupada, let him chant Prabhupada's Pranam Mantra. By then let him become conversant with who all are the current initiating gurus, and let him choose one of them, and then he can start chanting their Pranam Mantra. Resolution 65, that if a guru is engaged in sense gratification, violating either one or more of the regulative principles, but there is hope that he can be rectified, then his disciple should allow time for such rectification to take place and they should take shelter of Srila Prabhupada and other senior Vaishnavas as Shiksha Gurus. So, why? Because by 1987, a lot of gurus had started falling down. Hansadutta had already fallen away. Bhaktipada had started deviating. That is, Kirtanananda Swami had started deviating. Likewise, many of those 11 people started falling down from grace. Jayatirtha Swami, he started taking drugs and he left the movement and became a worker in some store. And one of his disciples went and cut off his head. He beheaded him. This happened with him. Similarly, there was Bhagwan Das, who was caught red-handed having homosex with children. These are unfortunate things that have happened. Then there was Bhagavan, who ran away with a female disciple, etc., etc. A lot of very unfortunate things have happened. And so, the hitherto unknown things started happening in ISKCON. Initiating Guru has started falling down. This was unheard of, this was unexpected, and they did not know what to do. So they said, if your Guru happens to fall down, then please take shelter of Prabhupada. Resolution 66. That if a Guru has become hopelessly entangled in sense gratification, and it has been shown either by observation or from his own admissions that he has been regularly violating the regulative principles of Krishna consciousness, and that there is virtually no hope for his rectification, then the disciple should reject him and may accept re-initiation. Resolution 67. That if the spiritual master takes on demoniac qualities and becomes inimical to ISKCON, he should be rejected and the disciple may take re-initiation. And so on, so on. So, all these things, what they point out is, ISKCON has to deal with something which is not there in the Shastra. What is that? Pure devotee, Uttamadhikari, his divine grace, Vishnupad, Bhaktipad, Gurupad, etc. They are falling down. Whereas Prabhupada's teachings never teach such a thing. Resolution 70. That disciples of a suspended Guru, while performing aratik to the deities, this is important because the earlier resolution said, whenever a disciple is offering arati, he has to keep a small photograph of his Guru and offer the arati through him, offer the food through him. That is how it is supposed to be done. But in the case of a Guru who is suspended because he is not following the regulative principles, now what to do? What will the disciple do? That disciples of a suspended Guru, while performing aratik to the deities, should offer the various articles through Srila Prabhupada to the disciplic succession. This is quite interesting. Similarly, resolution number 71, that while offering obeisances in a public place, the disciples of a suspended Guru should recite Srila Prabhupada's pranam mantra aloud and should chant the mantras to the suspended Gurus silently or not at all. That the resolution number 84, that disciples of a suspended Guru, when offering bhoga to the deities in the temple or in any ISKCON establishment like restaurants, etc., outside the temple, must offer through Srila Prabhupada to the disciplic succession. So, the question is very simple. If the disciple can offer worship to Krishna through Srila Prabhupada, he can offer bhoga to Krishna through Srila Prabhupada, then why does it have to be done only when the Guru is suspended or he has fallen down? Why don't we make that the regular system? Everybody wants to offer worship to the Lord. Everybody wants to offer bhoga to the Lord. Any devotional service you want to render, render through Prabhupada. In other words, Prabhupada becomes the initiating Guru. Prabhupada becomes the Diksha Guru. Because Diksha Guru is the person who is the via medium representative of Krishna. He receives worship on behalf of Krishna. So, if suspended disciples can offer service to Krishna through Prabhupada, then why not everybody do it? It's such a simple logic. Now we switch over from 1987 to 1990. Resolution number 92. That before a devotee can be recommended for initiation or be officially encouraged to take shelter of a particular ISKCON spiritual master, he or she should demonstrate a basic understanding of Srila Prabhupada's teachings by answering an oral or written test administered by the temple president. The questions to be answered are, now this is interesting, and you have to understand this. When a devotee joins ISKCON, suppose he read Prabhupada's books and joined ISKCON, he does not know who is the initiating guru. Then in such a case, what happens? He is supposed to, first 6 months, stay in the temple, follow all the regulative principles, attend sadhana, etc. Always chant Prabhupada's pranam mantra, and he has to accept Prabhupada as his quote-unquote Shiksha Guru. He knows only Prabhupada, nobody else. So, he is offering pranam mantra to Srila Prabhupada, he is offering Guru Puja to Prabhupada. He knows only Prabhupada. Prabhupada is his connection to Krishna. And the same person, after, when the time for initiation comes, he gets switched over to somebody else. Unfortunately, if that person falls down, he again switches back to Prabhupada. So why this switch is needed at all? Why not continue with Prabhupada only? Now, the new devotee, Bhakta, when he has to take initiation, there are some questions which he has to answer to understand, to ascertain whether he has understood properly or not. What are the questions that the temple president will ask? Number one, what are the qualifications of a bona fide spiritual master? I am sure all of you know that. Number two, why are you convinced to follow the orders of the spiritual master in this life and even life after life? That means it is very clear what they are saying here is, if you are going to take initiation from XYZ spiritual master, you should have the proper philosophical understanding how he is a bona fide spiritual master and how you have to follow his orders not only in this life but life after life. You have to, so this is very significant because we sing for during Guru Puja to Srila Prabhupada, Janme Janme Prabhu. Life after life, he is our spiritual master. So they are saying here that all these initiating spiritual masters in ISKCON in 1990, their understanding was they are spiritual master life after life. They are bona fide spiritual masters. Question number 3, why does one worship the spiritual master like God? That means the initiating spiritual masters in ISKCON at that time, the understanding was they have to be worshipped like God. Sakshad Haritvena. This was the understanding. Question number 4, do you believe the spiritual master speaks the absolute truth? If so, why? Fifth question is, under what circumstances should the spiritual master be rejected? What is the unique position of Prabhupada in ISKCON? Etc. etc. And the other are general questions. So we can understand clearly the understanding in 1990 was the initiating gurus are Sakshat Haritvena and they are spiritual masters life after life, but they can fall down. This was the understanding. So you can see 1978-77 when Srila Prabhupada left this planet, everybody, even a bhakta, had the proper understanding. Initiating spiritual master means Sakshat Haritvena, Yasya Prasadat Bhagavat Prasada, and he is an Uttamadhikari who can never fall down. That understanding by 1990, 12 years later, it had changed to that the spiritual master can fall down. Now, 1992, resolution number 71. There are many things that got changed here. I'll read the changed, this one, resolution. The new resolution is, a new devotee who follows the 4 regulative principles and chants 16 rounds for the first 6 months should chant Srila Prabhupada's pranam mantra and worship him as founder Acharya of ISKCON and his Shiksha Guru. During the second 6-month period, the disciple may choose his future Diksha Guru and chant his pranam mantra. After a period of at least 1 year, the devotee may be become eligible to be initiated. So that is revised to that a new devotee who follows the 4 regulative principles and chants 16 rounds for the first 6 months should chant Srila Prabhupada's pranam mantra and worship him as founder Acharya of ISKCON and his Shiksha Guru at any time after the initial 6-month period, and after passing the required examination, the candidate may choose his future Diksha Guru with the permission of the Guru, and after notifying the local temple president, begin to worship him as spiritual master and chant his pranam mantra. So even in 1992, this understanding continued. 19 97. Law, resolution number 617, that there shall be no establishment of murtis in any ISKCON temple room of ISKCON gurus subsequent to Srila Prabhupada in succession. Slight change. 1999, that's the famous year when the doctrine of Ritvikism was condemned, and anybody who suggested that Srila Prabhupada is the actual Diksha Guru could be banned and thrown out of ISKCON. There are various resolutions to that effect. So, subsequent to that, the resolution number 403 concerning Gurus in ISKCON of 1999. Whereas Srila Prabhupada established ISKCON in 1966, and prior to his disappearance in November 1977, he stated in his will that the GBC body is the ultimate managerial authority for the society. Unfortunately, shortly after Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, the GBC body allowed for an unauthorized zonal Acharya system to evolve in ISKCON, elevating 11 exclusive successor Diksha Gurus. So, this in 1999, 21 years later, the GBC is realizing they made a mistake in elevating 11 people as zonal Acharyas, successor Diksha Gurus. It took them 21 years to realize this mistake. Whereas ISKCON leaders at the time then introduced the concept that ISKCON Diksha Gurus were Mahabhagavatas and the only current links to Srila Prabhupada and the disciplic succession. Whereas some ISKCON Diksha Gurus who had formerly practiced Vairagya Vidya, but in the process of expanding the movement began living opulently, accumulated property, wealth, disciples and prestige far beyond the necessities for effective preaching. Whereas in their overemphasis on Diksha Gurus, Srila Prabhupada's disciples and followers failed in various ways to properly establish and sustain Srila Prabhupada's unique role and personal relationship with all ISKCON devotees as the founder Acharya and preeminent Shiksha Guru in ISKCON. ISKCON leaders failed to also properly establish the importance and role of Shiksha Gurus in ISKCON. Now they have started a new thing, saying Prabhupada, no, these people have not replaced Prabhupada. They are not Sakshat Haritvena, they are not Mahabhagavatas. As we saw until 1992, the resolutions clearly said the devotee who is getting initiated, temple president has to have a written examination to ascertain that he has understood that Guru has to be Sakshat Haritvena, as good as God, and he has to accept him life after life. These are all the characteristics of Mahabhagavatas. Now they are saying, no, Diksha Gurus are not Mahabhagavatas, and they have not replaced Prabhupada. Prabhupada continues to remain they introduced a new term, preeminent Shiksha Guru. There is no such term in the whole of Prabhupada's teachings. They introduced something new. In one sense, it is better than saying they have replaced Prabhupada, to say that somehow there is some role continuing to exist for Srila Prabhupada and ISKCON. This is after 21 years, mind you. Whereas the authority and resources of the GBC body were minimized by the exaggerated prominence of ISKCON Diksha Gurus. Actually, the prominence of Diksha Guru was not exaggerated. What happened was, the current understanding in 1977 when Prabhupada left the planet of the position of a Diksha Guru was superimposed upon unqualified people. There was no exaggeration or over-exaggeration or over-emphasis. But the GBC is refusing to recognize this. They have turned the thing on its head, and instead of saying that they were unqualified, they are saying there was over-emphasis. So this is to save their face. What was the result? Resulting in a fragmented ISKCON composed of many Guru zones instead of a unified ISKCON movement under the auspices of the GBC body. This is a problem which exists in ISKCON even today. Entire ISKCON is completely fragmented. One temple president is there, he is a disciple of one Guru, and under him there are devotees who are disciples of some other Guru. And because this temple president Guru is somebody else, the disciples of the other Guru will not listen to the temple president. They will listen to their Guru. So because of this, currently, now the GBC has brought out another document called Lines of Authority to try to ease out this situation, because temple presidents are saying we are not able to run the temples. And between devotees in the same temple, there will be one group of devotees, they are disciples of one guru. There is another set of devotees who are disciples of another guru. And they create two factions. This group glorifying that guru. Any new devotee comes to the temple, they go and start glorifying their guru to him, trying to canvas to that person and make him a disciple of this guru. Whereas the other faction also goes to that person and starts glorifying their guru, wanting that the new person should also become disciple of their guru. So this kind of infighting, factionalism, fragmentation has become widespread in ISKCON. This is the unfortunate situation. This is not the way ISKCON was in 1977. Now, whereas despite warnings by Pradyumna Prabhu and others, for many years, the governing body commission, being weakened due to the zonal acharya deviation, failed to correct these errors to the detriment of many ISKCON members. The fact is, in 1978, when these 11 people declared that we are the next successor gurus, Pradyumna Prabhu wrote a very elaborate letter explaining how Diksha Guru is meant only for Uttamadhikaris, Mahabhagavatas. You people are not qualified, Prabhupada has not appointed you, etc., etc. But he was ill-treated and his words were not given any weightage. And whereas, despite GBC body efforts to correct the zonal acharya deviation, as flaws in the system surfaced and many of the zonal acharyas left ISKCON, our society continues to be affected by the misunderstandings of that system. Even today, ISKCON is being affected by the misunderstood system. And you can see here, it is hereby resolved that A. Apology to the society from the GBC body. The GBC body offers the following apology to the members and friends of ISKCON. The GBC is apologizing after 21 years. As humble followers of its divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, it is the GBC's body's duty to execute his will to the best of our ability as we collectively understand it. During Srila Prabhupada's physical presence, he simultaneously empowered the GBC body and guided us when we erred. We continue to pray for his guidance and feel it is his will that we now correct the misunderstandings of the past. Thus, the GBC body, both individually and collectively, wishes to express its deepest apologies to and beg the forgiveness of the followers of Srila Prabhupada who are offended or hurt by our past decisions resulting in the excesses and abuses of the zonal acharya system and its ongoing ramifications. So, after 21 years, the GBC finally accepted we were wrong in declaring zonal acharyas. But instead of correcting that, they continue to propagate the same mistake, although the magnitude of that mistake may have been reduced by reducing the position of the gurus. Remove the Vyasasan, remove the photograph, don't have pranam mantra. You may do all these things, but still you are occupying the position of Diksha Guru, for which you are unqualified. This is the reality. You are not only, I may not be in the right position, I may not be the right person to judge who is qualified and who is unqualified. Fact is, they were not authorized by Prabhupada. This is not the system authorized by Srila Prabhupada. B. Apology to Pradyumna Prabhu from the GBC body. So, the GBC body gave a very elaborate apology to Pradyumna Prabhu also, because at that time itself he had pointed out that this is a wrong thing to do, but they did not listen to him. Then, instead of correcting the mistake, unfortunately, Resolution 404, Definitions of Guru and Divya Jnana, the GBC body accepts the applications in ISKCON, the following definitions of Guru and Divya Jnana. A Guru is one who transmits spiritual knowledge on the basis of revealed scriptures. There are different types of Gurus. The unique position of the Guru whose teachings received in disciplic succession from Lord Krishna form the basis of a spiritual institution is called the founder Acharya. The subsequent Gurus who honestly and sincerely represent the teachings of the founder Acharya are called Shiksha or instructing Gurus. These are all new things. We have never read any of these things in Prabhupada's books. A Shiksha Guru who introduces one to the spiritual path is called the Vartma Pradarshaka Guru. A Shiksha Guru who continues to instruct the student is known simply as Shiksha Guru. A Shiksha Guru who gives the student formal initiation is called a Diksha Guru. And the founder Acharya himself remains the preeminent Shiksha Guru for every member of the institution. The last line again is a concoction. So, the essence of what they are saying is that Divya Jnana is the active principle, active ingredient of Diksha, and Lord Krishna through the previous Acharyas in disciplic succession and their empowered representative, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, whose appearance and achievements were predicted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, will continue to deliver the conditioned souls with the assistance of representatives of His Divine Grace. Now, why does Prabhupada need assistance? In 1977, Prabhupada was all alone. There were nearly 10,000 disciples of Prabhupada all over the world. That time, despite being limited to physically to one place, Prabhupada did not feel the need for any assistance to deliver the conditioned souls. Prabhupada himself was delivering everybody in ISKCON. All the 10,000 disciples of Prabhupada in ISKCON in 1977 knew for sure who is delivering them. Only one person, Srila Prabhupada. So now, where did the need for an assistance come? Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of ISKCON, is forever manifested through his books, his murti, his teachings, ISKCON, and the devotees who honestly represent his teachings. So, fact is that Prabhupada is present in his teachings, that is true, and Prabhupada continues to deliver the conditioned souls through his teachings. Because as they themselves have said in the previous part of this resolution, the Divya Jnana is the principal active ingredient of Diksha. And in Chaitanya Charitamrita also, Prabhupada says, the instructing spiritual master, the Shiksha Guru, who gives the maximum number of instructions, generally becomes the Diksha Guru. In ISKCON, who gives the instructions? Not maximum. All the instructions are given by Prabhupada only. So, it naturally follows that he has to be the Diksha Guru. Anyway, that is a different matter, that who can and who cannot become a Diksha Guru. The point is that Srila Prabhupada did not authorize this system for ISKCON. And when we don't follow the orders of the spiritual master, then we have to concoct various theories to support our stand. Now, law number 405, standards of Guru worship in ISKCON. So, the earlier method of worship was changed to ISKCON devotees shall instruct new members to take shelter of Srila Prabhupada and to receive guidance, training and assistance from those who are practically and directly instructing them in Krishna consciousness. ISKCON members shall not compel or coerce new members to accept any particular Shiksha or Diksha Guru or to take Diksha initiation at any particular point in time. New members shall choose when and from whom they wish to request initiation. However, for a minimum of 6 months of strict sadhana, they must focus their attention on Srila Prabhupada as a founder Acharya and their Shiksha Guru. After having established a solid relationship with His Divine Grace's Vani, they may accept an ISKCON Guru and after a subsequent minimum of 6 months, accept Vaishnava Diksha. If you have to accept Diksha from any of the ISKCON self-authorized Gurus, you have to first hear all of Prabhupada's instructions and become firmly fixed in Prabhupada's instructions. Prabhupada, we receive all the instructions from Prabhupada, but Diksha take from someone else. This is what is being said. After chanting the pranam mantra of their Diksha or Shiksha Guru, all grand disciples and future generations should chant at least the first part of Srila Prabhupada's pranam mantra while offering obeisances as a means of respecting the founder Acharya. So, when you join ISKCON, first 6 months, you know only Prabhupada pranam mantra. After 6 months, you keep aside Prabhupada, select somebody and then start chanting his pranam mantra. In order to offer appropriate respect to Srila Prabhupada as founder Acharya and preeminent spiritual master of ISKCON, this is a new term which has been invented. It is considered an essential devotional practice for all ISKCON devotees to observe or perform Srila Prabhupada's Guru Puja daily, either in an ISKCON temple or if not possible in one's home. So now they are saying Guru Puja must be performed for Srila Prabhupada daily. Whether you worship your spiritual master, your Diksha Guru in ISKCON or not, doesn't matter. But every day you have to worship Srila Prabhupada. With an aim to focus more fully on Srila Prabhupada and every devotee's special relationship with him, and to correct any imbalance in application between the respect offered to Shiksha Gurus, Diksha Gurus and other senior Vaishnavas contributing to a devotee's spiritual progress, an ISKCON Shiksha or Diksha Guru may accept public Guru Puja in person once a year on ISKCON property as a Vyasa Puja. So now, Guru Puja was being done for the Diksha Guru outside the temple hall. That got stopped. And it was said, only once in a year you may accept Guru Puja, rest of the year, no. Rest of the year it is for Srila Prabhupada. ISKCON events welcoming Vaishnavas, including Shiksha and Diksha Gurus to ISKCON's temple should be modest. For example, limited to a presentation of garland and accompanying kirtan. No more Pada Puja, no more grand reception at the airports and all these kind of things. ISKCON leaders shall teach that Srila Prabhupada's books and teachings are the foundation of the spiritual lives of all ISKCON members. Therefore, all ISKCON members shall consider it their compulsory duty to study Srila Prabhupada's books. Hearing from other devotees' books and teachings is secondary and supplemental and should not be done at the expense of hearing regularly from Srila Prabhupada. Please remember, the previous part of the resolution said that Divya Jnana forms the principal ingredient of Diksha. And now they are saying all the instructions you should take from Prabhupada, but Diksha you should take from someone else. Draw your own conclusion. Temple presidents and project leaders are fully responsible for engaging the devotees in their charge. Gurus must first consult with the temple president before talking to a disciple about changing their service. Now you can see, Guru does not have authority even to change the service of his disciple. This is the pitiable situation of Gurus in ISKCON. Gurus shall minimize the number of devotees engaged in their personal service and in their travelling entourage. Guru cannot decide how many people, how many of his disciples should serve him personally. Gurus shall not personally engage single members of the opposite sex or married members of the opposite sex without their spouse in direct personal service and should never be alone or in a solitary place with them as ordained by Shastra. Guru Dakshina and other donations offered to Shiksha and Diksha Gurus are the property of ISKCON. At the time of Diksha initiation, all disciples will be further instructed by their initiating Guru that Srila Prabhupada is their pre-eminent Shiksha Guru as ISKCON's founder Acharya, ever present in his books and teachings. Thus, they have a recognized Shiksha link to Srila Prabhupada. Actually, what we are seeing is, everything Prabhupada is performing. Prabhupada is giving you Divya Jnana. Prabhupada is taking you back to Godhead. Every day, you have to offer worship to Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada is receiving your Guru Puja every day. Practically everything Prabhupada is doing. So, why Diksha has to go to somebody else? Even Diksha also Prabhupada can perform. 406. Law amending the laws on Guru protocol. Rights of ISKCON members to worship Guru. The amendment says, as it is enjoined in scripture that a devotee must honor his spiritual master, ISKCON members shall be trained to place their faith, trust and allegiance first and foremost in the founder Acharya, who is the preeminent Shiksha Guru for every member of ISKCON. Srila Prabhupada is to be worshipped through his words, his murti, his picture and his devotees. Disciples of ISKCON Diksha Gurus other than Srila Prabhupada may worship their Gurus according to the guidelines of ISKCON laws and in keeping with the spirit of the above mentioned standards for Guru worship in ISKCON, meaning Guru worship only once in a year. So like this, we can see how the ISKCON laws with respect to Gurus and their position and their worship has been changing from time to time to time. And the position of Prabhupada, they have been changing from time to time. Initially, they said Prabhupada has been succeeded. Then they said Prabhupada continues to be a Shiksha Guru. Then they said Prabhupada is a preeminent Shiksha Guru. And then they said, initially they said all these 11 people are his divine graces. Then they said they are those honorific titles can be used in private. Then they stopped using the honorific titles. Then they said they are not on the level of Mahabhagavata. They are not going to deliver you back to Godhead. They are not going to receive your daily Guru Puja worship, etc., etc. So they have been going on reducing the position of the Diksha Guru. And in fact, as late as 2012, the resolution number 307, whereas the GBC has received inquiries concerning the validity of the current ISKCON process of approving Diksha Gurus. Resolved, the GBC hereby commissions the production of a paper presenting the reasons and supporting evidence for the validity of the current process. The Guru Services Committee shall take responsibility for this paper to be finalized by so-and-so date. So that means, even as late as 2012, they don't have a proper philosophical basis for the validity of the current ISKCON process of approving Diksha Gurus. This is the reality. In 1978, they did not have any position paper. They did not have any proper backing. 1987, they did not have. 1992, they did not have. 1994, they did not have. 1999, they did not have. 1999, after 21 years, they finally acknowledged that yes, what we did was wrong, because they, after several attempts to philosophically justify what they were doing from Prabhupada's works, when they failed, they finally said, yes, we are wrong, but this is our current understanding. So they presented a new position, but even that, as late as even 2012, they are saying, no, we don't know. We have to research and make a paper to validate what we are doing. Now, the current position of the GBC is, in one of the GBC resolutions, they have resolved that whenever they say that so-and-so person is Diksha Guru in ISKCON, they are saying that we are not saying that we are approving this person to be an initiating spiritual master, nor are we taking responsibility for his being qualified for that position. So the GBC says the responsibility of determining whether he is qualified or not rests with the prospective disciple. The prospective disciple has to check and test him and be convinced that he is a qualified spiritual master. So when the GBC is saying that so-and-so person can now act as initiating guru, what does the GBC mean? The GBC, now their understanding is, when we say that XYZ Prabhu can now start acting as spiritual master, we are only saying we have no objection to his acting as spiritual master. They are only saying they don't have an objection. They are not taking responsibility that he will take the disciples back to Godhead. They are not taking responsibility that, yes, we have checked him, tested him and found him to be qualified to play the role of an initiating spiritual master. They are not saying that he is capable of taking you back to Godhead, that he will accept your daily Guru Puja worship, and he will deliver you from this material world, and he will be your spiritual master life after life. They are saying none of these things now. Now their position has changed to simply saying we have no objection to this person playing the role of a guru. So we can see how their position over the years has been changing. Their understanding of the role of a Diksha Guru, the position of a Diksha Guru, who can play the role of a Diksha Guru, all this has been changing with time. And even till today, they don't have any solid paper or evidence based on Srila Prabhupada's instructions that the present Diksha Guru system that they have in ISKCON of giving no objection to any devotee within the community, that he may act as spiritual master, but the onus, the responsibility of ascertaining his qualification is left to the prospective disciple. So this system, whether it is authorized, whether it is as per Srila Prabhupada's instructions and his teachings, they have still not been able to ascertain. They are still working, making various papers and trying to figure out how this is actually an authorized system. So the point is that when we have a clear-cut instruction from Srila Prabhupada in the form of the July 9th letter, stating that this is the way initiations have to happen in ISKCON through representatives of Srila Prabhupada, and all new disciples will be disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Such a clear-cut, simple, straightforward system which will work for thousands of years together. We have to simply accept what Prabhupada has given us instead of trying to invent some new things, trying to reinterpret the Shastras, bring out new definitions of Diksha Gurus, new definition of Shiksha Guru. These are all which are all not there in Prabhupada's books. Why do we need to do all these things? Let us simply stick to following Prabhupada's instructions. Otherwise, we can see over the years from 1978 onwards, so many changes. Diksha Guru means this, Diksha Guru means that, this is the role of Diksha Guru, this is the role of Diksha Guru, this Diksha Guru can do, this Diksha Guru cannot do. Diksha Guru cannot even tell his disciple what service he should do. Guru cannot decide how many disciples should serve him personally. Blah, 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 blah. The list goes on. How many more modifications will we do? Will it take another 20, 30, 40 years for us to realize that just like in 1999, after 21 years, the GBC realized that we have made a mistake and apologized to the whole society? Who knows, another 50 years down the line, the GBC may again wake up and say, oh, this Diksha Guru system that we have realized that we don't have any basis for this. Now we are making an apology. Why wait and destroy devotees' spiritual lives like this? Better is to adopt what is clear, crystal clear instructions given by Srila Prabhupada in the July 9 directive and follow the system of having representatives of Srila Prabhupada who are called Ritviks to act on behalf of Srila Prabhupada and initiate new devotees as disciples of Srila Prabhupada and forever solve all the problems that are plaguing ISKCON as far as Diksha system is concerned. So, these are some of the thoughts. I'm sure all of the audience has people who are capable of judging for yourself. You please look at all the flip-flops that have been happening in ISKCON by the GBC, and it will be clear to you what is going on and what is their ever-changing stance on the matter of Diksha. And on the other hand, you have a simple, very clear, beautiful, wonderful system which was set up by Srila Prabhupada in the July 9th, 1977 directive. And we simply follow that. Even today, that system can be implemented and followed without any flaw. So, the decision is in your hands whether you want to stay with a system which is going on, changing and evolving into lower and lower stages. Evolution should go upward, but here we are seeing the position of Guru in ISKCON is evolving to lower and lower levels. So, do we want to stay with such a system and where the GBC after 21 years wakes up and says, oh, we made a big mistake in understanding the position of the Diksha Gurus and we need another 30-40 years for the GBC to again wake up and give one more apology? Do we want to do that, or do we want to follow the system which Srila Prabhupada himself gave on July 9th, 1977? The decision is in your hands. Thank you. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.